Good evening, book lovers. Welcome to another episode of Cath-Lit Live. I am your host, Amy Cattapan. You can find me everywhere on social media under my pen name, AJ Cattapan. If you're new to Cath-Lit Live, here's what we do. We do interviews with authors who have new books releasing. In fact, tonight's author, her book is going to be coming out soon. It's coming out on October 2nd. This is a repeat guest to Cath-Lit Live because she's a very prolific author. We're going to be talking tonight with Amanda Lauer. And as always, if you haven't already checked out the Hello app, they are a sponsor for the show. And if you use my link, hello.app/cathlitlive, you get a special free trial. So go ahead and check out the premium content on the prayer app Hello at hello.app/cathlitlive. So once again, tonight's guest is Amanda Lauer. Let me tell you a bit about her. An avid reader and history buff since childhood, Amanda Lauer is the author of the award-winning Heaven Intended Civil War series. In addition, Amanda has written 2 time travel novels, Anything But Groovy and Royal and Ancient. She contributed short stories to the anthologies Treasures, Visible and Invisible, and Ashes, Visible and Invisible. Amanda and her husband, John, have been married 42 years, have 4 grown children, a daughter-in-law, 3 sons, and 8 precious grandchildren. Please help me welcome Amanda Lauer.
Hello.
Hi, Amanda. How are you?
I'm doing great, Amy.
Thank you for joining me tonight.
Thank you for asking me.
I was saying that you're a very prolific author because I've had you on so many times. I think I've lost track if this is your 3rd or your 4th time coming on to talk either about one of your own books or one of the anthologies that you've contributed to. But tonight, this is a solo project, your own novel, Royal and Ancient. So why don't you start by giving us sort of our 30-second elevator pitch if someone's never heard about Royal and Ancient. What is this story about?
So we have a 17-year-old girl from the United States. She's working at a golf course, and it's Founder's Day, so everybody's dressed in clothes from Scotland. And it's a golf course that's like the oldest golf course in the world, which is Royal and Ancient St. Andrews. And she gets struck by lightning and wakes up on the 17th green, which she thinks is her golf course, but it's actually the original ancient golf course in Scotland. And she's surrounded by a group of men wearing kilts. She thinks they're part of the party, but they're not. And she finds out that she is dropped into the year 1691. So she has to survive life 300 years previously, and not only life, but love, because she meets a young Scottish man, a Highlander, who catches her eye. And there's lots of political intrigue in the show too. Or I keep saying the show or the movie. It's a book. Maybe it'll be a movie or a show someday. But there's laughter, there's tears, there's arguments between them, but in the end, there's love. So even though there's a lot of intrigue in between there.
I'm getting a little bit of a Brigadoon vibe for fans of the musical Brigadoon, right? A little
There
bit.
you go.
Little bit of that.
They don't break into musical numbers every 2, no, not really.
On the book. So what sparked your interest in writing time travel? Because this is your 2nd time travel book.
Yep. When I was a kid, I went to a tiny little Catholic school. It was so small that our principal, the sister who was our principal, was also the librarian. So I knew her very well on a good basis, right? And I think I checked about every book out of that little library that I could. But one of my favorite books was A Wrinkle in Time. I was always fascinated with the topic of time travel. It just always caught my attention. And I thought about this for years. And the first book I wrote was actually Civil War, because I love Civil War history. And I wrote a whole series on the Civil War. As a matter of fact, the next book for that is coming out November 17th. So maybe we'll talk after that. But for like the last 9 or 10 years, I've had this in mind, and I've actually had written a couple chapters, but never got too far because it always got on the back burner because of all these other Civil War books and my other time travel. So finally it came to the top of the pile, and I finished writing it, and I pitched it to Chrism Press actually at one of our conferences, and they bit and gave me a contract, and voila, the book will be published on October 2nd this year.
Awesome. Yeah. So when Amanda was talking about one of her conferences, she's of course referring to the Catholic Writers Conference. The Catholic Writers Guild holds a live conference and an online conference every year. And it's a great opportunity to pitch to publishers like Chrism Press. So I'm so glad that worked out for you. What made you pick 17th century Scotland? Like you were, you have your Civil War series and then anything but groovy, like 1970s. So why 17th century Scotland?
Well, I knew that I wanted it to be set in the Highlands of Scotland. And I knew it wanted to be, I wanted it to be a couple hundred years ago, what have you. But I also knew I wanted it to be set on a golf course. So I had to make sure it was after St. Andrews was built, obviously. And then I was researching Scotland and realized there was an event in the year 1692 called the Glencoe Massacre. And I thought, what would it be like if this poor girl from the US drops into Scotland and all of a sudden there's a massacre basically between two clans, and she's stuck right in the middle of this. And that's how I ended picking that particular time frame and Scotland. And another thing about Scotland in general is that I've always known as half Irish because my dad's parents are from Ireland, so obviously I knew that. I never really knew the other side of my heritage because my mom had never met her birth father. And we ended up doing Ancestry.com a few years ago, and I discovered that her father was actually half British and half Scottish. So that's my love of kilts and bagpipes and all things Scottish.
It all makes sense now.
I know, right? Why? But I've always been fascinated. I love bagpipe music. I think it's beautiful. And I've always loved stories about the Highlands anyhow. So it was such a neat opportunity to write the story. The research, oh my gosh, it's crazy. And you can go down a lot of rabbit holes. But I try to incorporate as many real life events as I can into my stories. And what I do is I take people who are fictional and I weave them into lives of people who actually lived in the times that my stories are set. So they're people who touch the famous people in those times.
Yeah.
I think the readers will be interested in this. And it's kind of funny because Outlander is kind of the big thing now, right?
Yeah.
And what I tell people when they're saying, well, what's your book like or whatever, I say it's the clean version, the sweet version of Outlander. So for people who don't like violence and all that, I think they'll appreciate this because I write sweet romances. From day one, that's what I set out to do because I always wanted to write books that my children and my grandchildren could read and that I'd be really proud to have them read. And coincidentally, my first time travel, which was anything but groovy that you mentioned, our 10-year-old grandson read it over the summer and loved it. And so it was just like so heartening because finally my dream has come true. My kids have been great. They've read all my books. They've been really great supporters, and my husband as well. But this is the first time one of our grandchildren has been old enough to read one of my books. So I'm excited that he got to read that. And I hope he reads all of them eventually as he gets older.
Now, would you consider this one like a young adult, teen appropriate one too? Because how old is your main character?
She's 17 and the young man is 19. All my books are considered YA, so young adult. And the interesting thing is this is the very first YA book that Chrism Press is publishing. So I feel really honored that they chose my work to publish as their first venture into this. And so, definitely considered YA or young adult. However, I can see kids from late middle school, early high school, all the way people, 70s, 80s, 90s. Hopefully I'm sure my mom will read it. My dad will read it. I hope they love it as much as I do. But it's appropriate for a lot of ages. But I think the reason it's considered YA is because the two main characters are both teens, and also it's a sweet romance.
So what makes this book unique compared to other ones that are similar, like similar genre?
Well, again, we go back to Outlander because Outlander has a similar storyline. But to be honest, I've never read the book. I've never watched the series. I've been working on this book for about 10 years, and I didn't want to, once I knew of the book and knew of the series, I didn't want to get that in my head.
Yeah.
And so I purposely stayed away from it. But I don't know that I'll ever watch it, to be honest, because I don't like violence, and I would rather just see the sweet side of romance and love. And so, that's kind of really the big thing that differentiates it. Plus, I would say too, because there's a lot about the Catholic Church in this, which you obviously won't see in a secular show like that. And the reason all the troubles began was because Catholicism was outlawed in Scotland in the 1600s,
Mm-hmm.
and some clans were still practicing the Catholic faith. They had priests hidden on their property that were doing mass, and they were still receiving the sacraments. And some people refused to sign an oath to England, basically
Mm-hmm.
that saying that they would follow the Church of England. And a lot of people became martyrs because of that. And that's really what happened at the Glencoe massacre.
So if people want to find out more about this book or any of your other books, where should we send them?
The easiest place is amandalauer.com. Everything is there. It's a great website. I didn't put it together. I have a great website designer. But yeah, we have everything from my book signings to these interviews. You can order the books right on there. Someday maybe we'll have merchandise. Who knows? We're working on it. And hopefully someday one of my books will be made into a movie. We're actively working on that right now. And then you'll know more about that. If you go onto the website, you can also sign up for my newsletter, which goes out about every other week. And you can hear all the latest news about all my books. So
awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on tonight, Amanda. I know you're at a writing retreat, so I'm going to wish you happy writing. I hope God blesses your time there.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Nice talking to you.
Nice talking to you too. All right. Bye, Amanda.
Bye.
All right. Thank you for joining me for another episode of Cath-Lit Live and another chance to talk with Amanda Lauer. So if you've read any of her books, let us know in the comments what you think. If you've read her time travel or her historical fiction. Wow, I'm tripping on my words tonight, guys. I'm so sorry. But thank you to everyone for joining us. Make sure you like and subscribe if you are watching this on YouTube. And until next time, I'm just going to wish everybody happy reading.